Hi guys, in this video I want to break down the way that I usually approach creating any kind of design sketch into a few different steps. The steps are almost the same if you're working on paper or if you're going to be working with an iPad, Procreate or some kind of digital sketching tool. The first step to most of the sketches that I do is to find inspiration. Before designing anything or starting a sketch, I'll usually find at the very least a few kind of similar different products online to have a look at some of the design details and to get some inspiration before I start sketching. If you're starting a new design project, you'll usually do some research first, and you'll probably create some mood boards which are going to help you with your initial ideation process and to help you to explore some new ideas for a new product. Step number 2 is rough sketching. This is where you're going to get into the sketching process, and the way that you approach a sketch can change depending on a few different things. It can change depending on where you're at in the project, and if this is a new project or if you already have some ideas developed. And it can also change depending on the kind of sketch that you're trying to create. If it's something that you want to be a rough exploration sketch, or if you want it to be a more realistic presentation sketch. You can sketch in 2D or 3D, using point perspective to make a more realistic looking sketch. And you can start out by drawing basic shapes and basic forms like boxes, cylinders and ellipses, and then build more detail with construction techniques. Once you've constructed your object with a light pen pressure, you'll have a really good idea of which lines you want to keep within your sketch. At this point, you can start to increase the line weight and solidify some of the key shapes and forms in your object. This will make the sketch look more defined and more intentional, especially if you're going to be showing this to someone else. Number 4 is to construct your lighting and shading. So once you have some nice defined shapes in your object, you can make it look a lot more realistic by starting to construct some lighting. You can do this by first adding a light source and then starting to construct some of the lighting effects. I like to break down the shading into key areas like shadows, highlights, and cast shadows. And when you do all of this with a single light source, all of the lighting is going to work together and it's going to look a lot more real. Step number 5 is to add base colors. So the next step is to start adding colors and base colors to your object. Here I'm adding base colors in a new layer underneath the sketch, and I'm breaking down these base colors into different parts of the object. Using the base colors that are separated like this will make it a lot easier to add shading effects on top in a new layer later. The next step is to add shading. So I've already marked out and constructed where I want my shading effects to be, my shadows and highlights, and these are all going to be working with the light sources that I have in the sketch. So here there's a light source from the left and from the right, because that usually looks good with reflective materials. And because this is reflective, I have a few different tones. I'm using some light grey tones, and I also have a dark reflection in the middle. I'm adding these into clipping mask layers, which are placed above each of the base color layers, so the effects only stay within the area of those base colors. Here I'm also using a soft light blend mode to create a softer shading effect. The last thing that I do with a sketch is to add extra effects and details. So here you can add any extra details like cast shadows, which I'm adding with a soft airbrush. And you can also sharpen up the outlines with more line weight, or add some highlights and extra highlight details with a white pencil brush. So that's it for this video. I hope this is helpful to someone to break this down into a few simple steps. I've been a product designer for almost a decade now, and if you're interested in learning more about how I sketch and how I think about sketching, you can check out this video series that I've put together, which is linked in the description. I spent a long time putting this together, and if you want to learn how to sketch or design your own physical products, I think it's going to save you a lot of time. So that's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.